if you're in the news that you've been vetted. You need to be conscious of what newsworthy is. The journalists want to be the first one to have a crisis communications plan in place, get a relationship with your local media.
Marketing, like a symphony, is a harmonious blend of instruments. But without the proper direction, it's just noise. Welcome to the Supply Chain Marketing Show, presented by Supply Chain Brain Media. From the art of storytelling to the science of data, we'll uncover marketing strategies that drive success. In this episode, PR maven Nancy Marshall explains why talking to the press is beneficial. Now, here's our host and marketing guide, Ralph Henderson.
Is earned media as important as lead generation? Can you get an ROI, a return on investment, with earned media? Can earned media enhance what you do at trade shows? Hi, I'm Ralph Henderson. I'm your guide and the host of the Supply Chain Marketing Show, brought to you by Supply Chain Brain Media. And today we're going to talk about something that I believe is really important in marketing, but I'm not sure it gets as much glamour as branding and lead generation and content development. But today I think you're going to find out why it's just as equal as the rest of those things. And I believe you can use it along with those things. Today, we have with us Nancy Marshall. Nancy is the PR maven. She's been in earned media for 30 years. She's been to many trade shows. She's very excited about earned media and has helped people be very successful in this area. And she's known for her enthusiasm and boundless energy while generating earned media for her clients. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you, Ralph. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Oh, no, it's our pleasure to have you here with us. Thank you for taking the time. And let's just dive right into it. One of the first questions I have that I think is important, when we talk about earned media, a lot of people hear earned media and they hear PR. What's the difference between earned media and PR?
PR is sort of like the umbrella term, and earned media is one aspect of PR. So it's a subset of PR. But PR also consists of a lot of other activities to engage the targeted publics of an organization.
Okay, so one is like the mothership and the other is the child, if you will.
Exactly.
Okay,
right.
No, that makes sense. So why is earned media so important for businesses in the supply chain space?
Well, earned media gives a certain amount of credibility to a brand of any kind, because people know that if you're in the news, that you've been vetted by a journalist who has integrity and ethics, and they have standards for determining if something is newsworthy or not. So when you're in the news, whether it's on the television news, the radio, or newspaper or magazine, people think, wow, that's really something. And it's much more credible than the social media that you might post about yourself. As a matter of fact, if you get earned media coverage, then you share it on your social media so that all of your targeted audiences can see that you are covered by a media outlet.
Okay, yeah, no, and I like the credibility part of that. And one of the things that I have found in the 3+ decades I've been in this space is sometimes people go after earned media without really earning it. So my question is, for those people, how do you actually earn media?
Well, first of all, you need to be conscious of what newsworthy is, because journalists are creating news. So they want something that is newsworthy. So anytime you have a new product, a new service, a new person, a new award, or anything that's new, a new location, new factory, whatever, that is newsworthy. And then next you need to know what are the media outlets that cover your industry or would be interested in this. So that could be based on the region that you're located in geographically, or the industry that you're located in. And then you're talking about trade publications that cover your industry. So when you have something that's newsworthy, you need to connect that news with the journalists that are covering your industry or region.
Yeah. And that's a great connection to my next question, because again, I think in the supply chain space, we value trade shows immensely. And one of the number one reasons that people go to trade shows is to see what's new. And I guess what we're saying is they also go to see what's news. And so help the audience with what opportunities would there be at trade shows for them to talk about what's new?
Well, first of all, because journalists know that there's new and newsworthy subjects being announced at trade shows, there's going to be a lot of media people at trade shows. And a lot of times a trade show will have a press conference to kick off the trade show. So if you're going to a trade show, you need to find out if they're having a press conference or if they have a press list or media list that they'll share with you as an exhibitor. So you need to find out if you can be in that press conference. And in my career, I have coordinated announcements at those press conferences. And that's a golden opportunity to be kind of like part of the most newsworthy announcement at a trade show.
Yeah, and that's really powerful what you just said. And I think if people would embrace that and get their mind around that, that would be something they could benefit from really, really strongly at a show, in preparation for the show or at the show. One of the things that I know, again, as an executive and a longtime marketing person in the space is, we spend a lot of money at these shows. And because of that, obviously, we have to create budgets. We have to talk about, how much it costs to put the booth up or how much it costs to, get it there, the labor, of course, and then, of course, all of our own people. But one of the things I don't think we talk about a lot is, where does the expense of the earned media come into play as it relates to shows? So, why should we plan to have an expense account at trade shows for the media and for earned media? Maybe help us with that.
Yeah, well, if you have personnel representing your company or your organization at a trade show, they have the opportunity to spend time and kind of rub elbows with journalists and build relationships. And my experience has been that it's those relationships where journalists know, like, and trust you, that you'll have the golden opportunity to not only pitch a story to them at that trade show, but have a relationship that can last throughout your career. And I have built my own career in public relations on having these relationships, not only with the reporters themselves, but even like the photographers. Because photographers, they have the opportunity to take photos of you and your products and your booth. And, those photos are actually really valuable in the media as well, or videographers. So it's all people that are involved with putting together the news that you want to have a relationship with. So again, when you're budgeting, you want to be sure to have some expense budget so that if there's an opportunity to take a journalist out for dinner or for drinks when the show closes, you want to take that opportunity, and don't just go back to your room because you're tired. You don't have time for that. You can be tired later. You need to spend all of your available free time in building those relationships. And again, I have a lot of experience doing that. And I think that's one of the reasons I've been successful, because journalists know that first of all, I love talking to them. I'm a real relationship person. And they also know that if they contact me after, I will get back to them. And I think that might be one of the other things that we were going to talk about today, Ralph, is how journalists are always going to be inevitably on deadline when they're doing a story. So if they reach out to you and want a quote, or if they want a photo or video or any kind of data, you need to get back to them quickly, because they probably need to file their story by a certain time and date.
Yeah, no, everything. Wow. I mean, if I'm listening or watching this podcast, I'm rewinding about 3 minutes and I'm listening to what you just said multiple times because that is really valuable. And it's interesting because it's one of those, it's right in front of you things that I don't think we think about when we're putting these shows together. Rightfully so, we're thinking about the prospecting, we're thinking about the future clients and our own clients. And that's fine for the business development and the salespeople. There's no problem with that. But as far as the marketing people are concerned, maybe we have another effort, if you will, that does the same thing for the people who are interviewing or reporting on or doing editorial at the show that we're responsible for. So now we have kind of these two initiatives happening for business development and sales with their prospects and their current clients, and with marketing and the journalists and the editors. So I really like that. And I think that's something that our viewers and our listeners can start to think about as we get into the next trade show season on how they might want to better manage that. And then I really love the second part of what you talked about, whereas just like with the salespeople, when prospects ring them up, they're told all the time, time is money, time is gold. You got to get back to those people as quickly as possible. Well, I think I really like what you're talking about with the editors and the journalists, because when you talk about the deadlines, it makes complete sense on why that time would be so sensitive and I would need to get back to them. So these are a couple of nuggets that if somebody's taking notes or really thinking about what they're doing for their shows or even between shows, that I think they can come away with. So really important, and really appreciate you talking about that.
We'll be back after this brief message.
In today's complex supply chain, marketing has never been more critical. But are you leveraging the full potential of your marketing efforts? Supply Chain Brain Media created 2 resources to help you discover what's new and what works. The Supply Chain Marketing Group series is designed to educate you on services and how to implement them into your marketing program. On the Supply Chain Marketing Show, hear firsthand how experts are implementing the elements from the 5 rings of supply chain marketing to drive results. Ready to elevate your marketing game? Schedule a 30-minute consult today. Email Morgan at supplychainbrainmedia.com. Supply Chain Brain Media, your guide to marketing success.
And now back to our show.
Another really big area of earned media and PR is, of course, the social media side. I mean, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about social media as it relates to PR. So the question is, how can you use PR and social media together? And then how does that help me get this ROI I talked about at the top of the show?
Sure. Well, inevitably, if you're putting out content on your social media, which you need to be doing, there will be journalists who will start noticing that, and they'll realize that they can get news or story ideas or leads on news by following your social media. So that's another reason for you to be proactively pushing out social media or blog posts or LinkedIn posts on an ongoing basis. But also, journalists will be they'll be very grateful to you if you share a link to the story that they produce on all of your social, because that's going to help drive traffic back to their site. And I actually know for a fact there are some TV stations that have a counter up on the wall in the newsroom that will show how much traffic is coming back to certain stories. And it's sort of competitive among the reporters for them to get stories that have the most traffic. So again, if you are the company or the PR person or the representative who's helping drive that traffic, they're going to be more likely to come back to you for another story, because they're going to be, and I know this from personal experience, because every time I get a story, I put it on all of my social, and I make an extra effort to drive traffic to that story. And the media people notice and appreciate it.
Wow. Again, Nancy, what you're doing is you're really peeling the onion on some things that I think all of our viewers and listeners, they kind of know, but I'm not sure, if we've given it a lot of thought or strategized about it. Like, for example, what was coming to my mind as you were talking about that is a lot of my social is simply trying to sell my products and services or try to sell my people. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Again, this isn't a mutually exclusive thing, but I think you're spot on in that in addition to doing that, I also need to be doing things that are newsworthy, that are more informational. And when I'm doing that, I'm really helping, if you will, the folks that are out there that are looking for these articles or this information or what's new. But if I've already got something that I've connected with people, then why not reciprocate? Why not do something that helps them where, they have actually taken the time to write the article or do the piece where I can give them credit or connect back with them? Because obviously, if I'm doing that, I'm getting more brand and more exposure, but they are too as a result of what they did with me. So I like the relationship, the back and forth. Talk a little bit more about what maybe our folks could do to help grow those relationships or strengthen those relationships in a kind of a real, authentic kind of a way.
Well, for one thing, journalists are human beings and they love to be thanked. So if a journalist does a story on your company or your brand or your product, write them a thank you note and send it in the mail. And I know that sounds old fashioned, but again, I feel like it's one of my secret weapons because a letter in the mail, with a stamp, that you write with a pen.
Yes.
It really stands out in this day and age when we do so much through text and through email. So people will say, I have letters that I've received right on my desk here that I save for a long time and I look at them and I think of that person. So a letter in the mail is one thing. And the other thing is to try to connect with that journalist again in real life when you're going to be, again, at the trade show, or if it's somebody who's local, offer to take them out for coffee and share some story ideas. And another thing I want to mention, Ralph, too, is like you do want to get a relationship with your local media, whether it's the daily newspaper or the local NBC, CBS, or ABC affiliate TV. And then because a lot of times a trade publication, if they see that you've been covered by your local media, they're more likely to do a story because, they always say journalists want to be the first one to do a story, but a lot of them, they need to see that somebody else thinks something is newsworthy. So if they can see that you've been covered by the local daily newspaper, or most of your markets across the country have a business newspaper, and it's a really good idea to be communicating and sending out news releases regularly to your business newspaper and to have a relationship with the editor of that publication. So that's a gold mine for getting earned media coverage.
Yeah, no, you're definitely dropping some great, information here for the supply chain marketing professional, because that's another thing that when you think about it, it makes complete sense. I need to get connected, especially in my corporate area, and if you're not at your corporate area, even in your local area with the news, and it's not necessarily because you think your local news is going to have a whole lot of manufacturing, distribution, and supply chain outlets, but it's because the more you can do that, the more attractive you become to people that are in those spaces. And so it's almost like becoming somebody who's well known in one place, and the other place then sees you and says, "Oh, I need to find out who these folks are, and I need to find out, what they're talking about." Which brings me to another question, and that is the who knows you. So one of my mantras that I've used throughout my career is that it's not what you know, because look, the people in our industry are very intelligent and very educated, and it's not even who you know, because you're finite. You can only know so many people. It really comes down to who knows you, right? The important part is who knows me or my company when it comes time for them to look at something that I can provide a product or a service for? And so one of the things I wanted to talk about is how the folks in the supply chain space can become that expert source. Like, how can they become that go-to source for whatever they're doing?
Well, there's something to be said for being an expert source or a thought leader. And doing that involves putting out, again, regular content, kind of like the heartbeat, where you're constantly pumping content out there, whether it's, again, on your own blog, on your LinkedIn, on your social media, but constantly showing that you're thinking about what's new and newsworthy in your industry. I know from personal experience during the pandemic, I was working with a company that was manufacturing the swabs for testing for COVID-19. And they were obviously incredibly newsworthy throughout the pandemic. And their sales representatives and their management became thought leaders, and they were being quoted in the media constantly. And also, when they went to trade shows, they were kind of like rock stars because everybody wanted to talk to them. And that's because, they were well known. And part of it is, when somebody Googles your name or your company name, you want a lot of content to come up in a Google search, not just your own website, but again, news sites that have that credibility. And, if you've been quoted by a publication like the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post or, Fast Company magazine, that raises your own notoriety and, that makes you more credible because you're known nationally. So again, earned media is the route to becoming known and to getting that kind of coverage into big national publications.
Yeah, I mean, and who knew? I mean, what you're talking about is something that we uncovered at the Global Supply Chain Marketing Summit in June of 2023, when we brought in these executives to talk to the supply chain marketing people about the different areas of marketing. And they were talking about earned media, but they were also talking about branding and content development. In addition to that, they were talking about online, SEO, and how all of these things are really interconnected. If you think about them, it's funny, the metaphor we used was marketing in the supply chain is very much like the supply chain. It's all linked together. And so if you're doing earned media that's getting you into news outlets, whether it's local or some of those national outlets that you were talking about, when people start to look at whether or not they want to do business with us, and those folks are going to do the same thing we do. They're going to Google us. They're going to Google our products and services. Well, if they start seeing things other than just, to your point, the website and the about us, and and those are all great, folks. Remember, we're not poo-pooing that. I mean, we want you to do that. We want you to have a very powerful website. We want you to have a very powerful about us. But in addition to that, if you're newsworthy, if you're somebody these news outlets have talked about and your prospect sees that, well, now all of a sudden you're in a different category. You're in a different level than the rest of the folks. And that's how you can become a subject matter expert. And as the marketing person, if you're the person who's done that, well, your company is going to think not just more about your company and the products and services, they're going to think more about you. They're going to think more about what you're doing and the value you're bringing. And Nancy, that would be the other question is, as it relates to earned media, them getting connected is great, but how can they better help their folks inside understand, like the people they work for and the people they're working with, on why earned media is so important and why we should be budgeting it, why we should be spending time and creating these initiatives that we've talked about. Maybe give them some encouragement for the people they're working for to help them have buy-in, if you will.
Right. Well, I mean, one way is to be sure to share with your internal team anytime you're getting any kind of news coverage. So, whether it's an email or whether you hold the newspaper up or show the video at a staff meeting. Again, I know from experience that if you show a video, like say you're having an employee party and you show the video, people really get pumped up. It helps them feel really proud, like, wow, my company is important enough to be featured in the news. And it's really good for morale in a company to do that. So again, you've got to constantly be reminding people that you're getting coverage in the news, but maybe you could also have, if you're having like a retreat or you're having some kind of a internal employee education day, maybe you could do a workshop for your own management and employees about how this all works, just so they can understand. And you might also want to do some media training so that people who are within your company who are subject matter experts, they know how to be interviewed by the media. Another thing I want to mention, and you hope that this doesn't happen, but if there's a crisis that happens at your company, that's another reason why media training is a good idea. Like say there's an accident or an explosion or a fire, the media is going to be coming to you to get the news right away. And there are ways that you can sort of manage the media so that you can kind of have your act together about how that accident or crisis is covered. I mean, in this day and age, there's also active shooters, which is a horrible thing to think about. But to have a crisis communications plan in place before that happens is a very good idea.
Right. So earned media is a benefit in many different areas. And let's end on a high note. Let's end on how earned media connects what we're doing throughout the year. So if we're doing one show or two shows or even more, how earned media helps enhance that, but also connects those shows so that we have something going on all year long. How do we do that, and why is that important?
Right. Well, I look at press releases or news releases as the heartbeat of a company. So if you have a media list, which you can get, there's an online company called Muck Rack that sells media lists. So if you want help in developing that list, you put that in your database, and then you should be sending something out at least on a monthly basis all year round. It's like the heartbeat. The news media might not use every news release that you send, but it's kind of like a sign like, oh, there's things happening there. You're alive, versus like the flat line that might happen if you don't communicate at all in between those trade shows. That's bad.
That's right. Yeah, no, that's great. So listen, hey, thank you for all of this. This is just a wealth of information, and I know everybody who's listened to this or watched this agrees. So thank you for spending the time and giving us your valuable insight and experience. And certainly if anybody wants to reach out to you, it's the PR Maven. They can find you on social media. They can certainly find you online. But thank you again, Nancy. We really appreciate you. And thank you for allowing us to see how earned media is as important as all these other areas of marketing and why we should be spending some time on it. So with that, we appreciate you.
Thank you, Ralph. I appreciate you too and your audience.
To discover how you can blend your marketing instruments into a harmonious sound and rise above the noise, schedule a 30-minute consultative session. Email Morgan at supplychainbrainmedia.com. Again, that address is Morgan at supplychainbrainmedia.com. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Supply Chain Marketing Show, presented by Supply Chain Brain Media. This is an omni-channel production in conjunction with PWE Media.